thanks for getting on camera today, Jordan. Wanted to give a chance for some of our clients to get to know the man behind the attorney, Jordan Palmer, a little bit. So I appreciate you, taking some time and doing this with me. Can you tell us a little bit about like where are you from?
Yeah, so I grew up here in St. George. We moved here, I think, when I was in first grade.
Okay,
so it's pretty young. My dad finished school up at Utah State, and he got a job down here.
Sweet.
So yeah, since first grade.
Geez, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
So where about in town did you live?
So we in Bloomington Hills, up through I think my junior year in high school, and then we moved out to Winchester.
Oh, okay.
For a year. Yeah, it was about a year, and then we moved back to our old house, and then to Bloomington.
Tell me, how did that work out? How did you move to Winchester for a year and then move back to your same house?
Yeah, so that was 2008 when the market crashed. So my parents were renting the house that I grew up until my junior year.
Okay.
And then they bought another house in Winchester.
Okay.
And then market went to crap. So I don't know what happened with the second house. Got out of that house, went back to our other house, and then everything went bad from there.
Gotcha. So did your parents buy that house that they had been renting all along, or they went back and rented it again?
No, so they bought it. When we first moved in, they bought it.
Cool. Did you have siblings?
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of I guess blended family-ish. My parents, 4 biological kids, so I have a older brother who's just little over a year older than me, a sister that's just a year younger than me, and then a little brother that's 2.5 years younger than me.
It's a pretty tight window.
Yeah. So within 5-6 years, my parents had 4 kids.
Yeah.
And then I have an older brother that's adopted. My parents did foster care.
Cool.
When we were all little. So when my oldest brother's name's Mark, when he turned 18, he signed his own adoption papers.
Awesome.
And then when I was 5 or 6, my parents got custody of 3 cousins.
Oh, no way. Okay.
And they fit all in between, like right in between all my siblings.
They were your same ages?
Same ages.
No way. So what was that like, having like 8 kids in the household?
Oh man, it was a madhouse.
Yeah.
So my oldest brother's about 10 years older than we are.
Okay.
So he was gone out of the house by the time we were like really.
So there's 7 of you though.
Right.
Within like a 5-year window.
Yeah.
So how does that work out? Were you like competing for Cocoa Puffs or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Just a madhouse all the time.
Yeah. What type of stuff like would you guys do as a family, like, or with your siblings?
Sports. All we ever did was sports.
Like what sports?
Our lives revolved around it. So we had a basketball court in our backyard. So we were always playing basketball. Huge soccer family. I have myself and my 2 brothers and my sister all played college soccer.
Sweet.
So growing up was just basketball, soccer. When we were little, flag football, and then, backyard volleyball, badminton, all that stuff.
Awesome. That sounds like a pretty fun childhood.
Yeah.
So tell me about like, what would your parents say about like, how would they describe you as like where you fit in amongst your siblings? Like what kind of kid were you, like as far as how you positioned in your family?
So I'm middle child.
Okay.
And all the qualities that come along with the middle child is how my parents would probably explain that I am.
Like forgotten or what?
For sure. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just with how the family dynamic worked, I was the kid that didn't require much growing up.
Okay.
Kind of just did my own thing. School, I didn't need too much help in. That kind of thing. So I kind of just, most of the time, just flew under the radar, as far as my siblings and that kind of thing go. Okay.
And you grew up St. George then all the way through from first grade, graduated high school here. Where'd you go to high school?
Dixie.
Cool. Okay. And what year did you graduate?
2008.
Okay. And then you went and played college soccer, or where'd you go to school? How did that work out?
Yeah. So after I graduated high school, I was only 17. So I was one of the young kids. I went to Dixie State for a year.
Okay.
I I guess I can't really say I went to Dixie State. I was enrolled at Dixie State, did basketball class and whatever other
bowling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was working full time as well.
What were you doing for work?
I was working construction.
Really? So you were working full-time construction while you were enrolled as a full-time student at Dixie State?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Right after high school. Kind of just living the college dream. And then, little over a year later, I went on my mission. Served a 2-year mission in Ecuador.
How was that?
It was wild. I was in the ghetto of Ecuador for 2 years.
Okay.
So we had a part of our mission that was on the beach. I never got to go there. So I was in like inner city.
So you were the middle child of your mission as well, just forgotten out there in the ghetto?
Yep.
Nice.
For 2 years, I really bounced around just a couple of areas.
Really? Okay.
For 2
Was
years.
it like dangerous?
They treated the missionaries pretty well.
Yeah.
If you had, the black name tag on, they knew you were, from God.
Okay.
So they didn't really mess with you, and they knew we didn't have anything.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I mean, there were some instances that missionaries got jumped and that kind of stuff, but very, very, very rare.
Okay. Have you been back to visit?
No.
Like, do you want to or no?
I would want to go see some of the people that I met.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily want to go back to visit the areas I was in.
Yeah.
Outside of wanting to see the people that, that I met.
Yeah. Like I went to Florida and there's lots of fun stuff to do in Florida, but to go back, like it's really just a couple relationships that is most interesting.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel about it.
So you go to school for a year, you're working full time. So come out right out of high school, young, working hard, end up going on a mission. So you're working hard, you're working for free. You get back home from a mission, and then where'd you end up going to school for undergrad?
Moved back in with my parents. I lived with them for 6 months, maybe 8 months. I guess November to August.
Okay.
And I was back full-time school. I worked as a pharmacy technician.
Okay.
At Smith's Pharmacy. My sister-in-law worked over there and got me a job over there. They needed a Spanish speaker.
Okay.
So I kind of fit right into that.
Yeah.
And then I did night watch for, Dixie Springs. So when they were building that subdivision, they would have all their metal piping and that kind of stuff out there. So you'd go and you'd sit out there all night and just make sure that no one was coming to steal all their stuff.
No way. Like construction materials and stuff?
Yeah.
So you just drive around? Like what do you do all night when you're not?
They gave you a little truck and they were like, oh, you can't fall asleep.
Okay.
So I'd bring my dog out there.
Yeah.
And we just hang out.
Did anybody come and try to steal the
No.
stuff? How long did you do that?
4 or 5 months.
Okay. That's pretty crazy. I've never worked anything like that.
Yeah, it was, it paid, I think it paid better than my pharmacy tech job.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have like a gun?
No.
You're just out there.
Just out there in this old beater truck, with my dog.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you were the defense team for Dixie Springs, huh?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're working then at working a couple different jobs, and you end up playing college soccer. How did that come about?
Yeah. So the college I went to was Iowa Western, middle of nowhere, Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Yeah.
My uncle was actually the head coach out there. My little brother had just played a year. Was one of the leading goal scorers in the nation.
Sweet.
And he was having some life struggles.
Okay.
So my uncle was hoping to bring both of us out there so I could kind of bring some, some normalcy to his life because he was struggling with so many things.
Okay. So you were the good sibling that needed to come and like fix the bad.
Yeah. So the first year, my little brother actually didn't end up going.
Okay.
He said, no, I'm going to stay home. So I went out there in 2012 was when I first got out there.
Okay.
So August of 12.
So you were playing some college soccer now in Iowa.
In Iowa.
Out in the cornfields.
Yeah.
And you met your wife out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So she actually played for the women's soccer team.
That's pretty cool. So it's a soccer love story. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I think we initially met at church.
Okay.
Being in Iowa, there's very few members of the LDS church out there.
Yeah, totally.
So we kind of bumped into each other there, talked a little bit, but then we'd see each other at soccer events. The men and women's soccer team was super tight.
Okay.
The two head coaches played college soccer together. We're best friends. So we all it was just when you got the men's soccer team, you got the women's soccer team and vice versa.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we started hanging out. Everyone would go out and party. So all the, Mormon kids would stay in and we'd hang out, play games and watch movies and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Drink sodas.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Yep.
So, and you've now been married how long?
10 years. We had our 10-year anniversary in June.
Okay. 10 years. And you've got kids.
Yep. 3 kids.
So when along that track, you're playing college soccer, you've got this cute girl in your ward that has got your eye that's on the women's soccer team. Like how long did you date? Like how did that process go down?
So we started dating probably in September.
Okay.
And then right before we went home for Christmas, I actually broke up with her because I could see that it was
Jordan.
I know. I could see that the relationship was moving to a spot that was like this is going to be serious.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I was ready for that.
Gotcha.
Anyway, I had worst 24 hours of my life. Just felt like I made the worst decision of my life.
You did.
Called her crying on the phone. We went and met and, and talked about it. And my wife told me if we're going to do this, this is it.
Yeah. Good for her.
So yeah, from that point on,
so she laid down the law and you stopped asking questions.
Right. Right.
Go. Okay, sweet. So I know that, and I know this because you and Audrey just recently went out and were both inducted into the Hall of Fame for your school, right? For the soccer team. Tell me about that. So what was that all about?
Yeah. So we both won the national championship in 2013.
That's sweet.
I could go into a huge family story there. It's my uncle and my little brother was on the team, and then my little brother's girlfriend at the time, now wife. Okay. So we were both, me and my wife, and then my little brother and his wife were on the teams together.
Okay.
And we won within an hour of each other.
No way. So these two siblings and these two Mormon couples are the cornerstones of these teams that end up winning national championships at the same time.
I mean, cornerstones. I don't know. I don't know if you could say that. My little brother's wife is probably one of the best women's soccer players I've ever seen.
Really? Okay.
My wife's a really, really good player as well. I was one of those guys that worked hard.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
Cool. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The guy that had to bring it every day, but wasn't going to get, too much playing time.
That's how I felt in high school basketball. Totally. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you've been married 10 years. You've got 3 kids today.
Yep.
And so tell me about when does this decision come about to go to law school? Were you always wanting to be a lawyer, or how did that go down?
No. So when I got home from my mission, I thought I wanted to do something with Spanish.
Okay.
So that's what I started going to school for. Everything revolved around that. It wasn't until we graduated from Iowa Western, just a 2-year college. So we graduated, and came back to Utah. We lived in Orem. Okay. My wife's from Payson, so we were, close to her home. And I was going to school trying to get my Spanish degree. I was wanting to be a Spanish professor. That was the goal. My brother-in-law worked down here for a company called McMullin Loan Center.
Okay.
And they had an office in Provo. So he's like, hey, you should go interview for this job. So I went and interviewed with, the front desk people to process loans.
Okay.
The attorney is from I guess the in-house attorney for McMullin Loan Center, was needing an assistant.
Okay.
So they decided not to hire for the front desk position, but he got a hold of my resume and called me kind of out of the blue. And was like, hey, will you come in for an interview with me? I think you'd be a good fit for this other position that we have open.
Sweet. Okay.
So kind of, yeah, oddly enough, like landed into this spot where I'm working under an attorney.
So what type of stuff like were you doing that was like law related? For
Yeah.
these
So
guys,
it was
a legal assistant.
It was debt collection.
Okay.
And we had the in-house collection team, and then I was, more or less the legal department.
Yeah.
And we were filing, 150 to 100 lawsuits a week.
Okay.
Just, small loan debt collection.
Yeah. Like when you go to small claims now, like usually half the matters like ahead of you when you're waiting to go up is like these debt collectors that are doing that same thing. Yeah. Okay.
So I was the guy behind the scenes. I didn't have to make any calls or anything like that. I just got all the complaints ready.
Okay.
And the guy that I worked for, his name's Aaron Bartholomew.
Okay.
Just an amazing attorney.
Cool.
Just an amazing person. And that's what really sparked my interest to go to law school.
Yeah.
And then I was working there for probably, 3 or 4 months. And within a couple of days, I got a call from my dad and my father-in-law, just kind of out of the blue. And they stay like they let us make our own decisions. They're not in our lives. They're like, hey, you guys do you. Yeah. We don't want to influence you, in any way, whatever decisions you're going to make. But I got a call from both my dad and my father-in-law, and they were both like, hey, you should think about going to law school.
Interesting. Like had you asked them that? Or you're saying like they called like this, gave this unsolicited advice?
Yeah. So they call, and I mean, we were close to my in-laws. We were just, 20 minutes north. So we saw them all the time. I have a really, really good relationship with them. So I talked to both of them within just a couple of days, and both of them were like, hey, you really need to think about going to law school. And then that kind of got the wheels turning. I told my wife, and she was like, really? Like, you're going to make that drastic of a change from being a Spanish professor to going to law school? Yeah. But yeah, we made that decision and took the LSAT and.
Sweet. Yeah. So how'd you end up? So I know, you ended up going to University of Oregon law school up there, which I was really interested in that too. And almost ended up going there. Tell me about picking a law school. How did that process work out? Moving to Eugene. Yeah.
So we were hoping to get into a Utah school, so our only options were BYU and Utah. I got denied at BYU and I got waitlisted at Utah.
Okay.
And then I applied to just other random schools around the country. And one happened to be Oregon.
Okay. Because of their football team, you applied.
Yeah. I mean, sports, all that stuff. So, for whatever reason, applied to go out there, and that's the school that I ended up getting into. It's funny because my wife actually wrote my Why Oregon statement. We had to write the statement on why we wanted to go to the University of Oregon. At that time, I was a terrible writer. So I started writing this, and my wife's like, that is like, this sucks. Okay, right? Sweet. So she just takes it and she writes this, why Oregon statement for me.
Yeah.
And we end up getting in.
Yeah. So she was used to selling you because she'd already sold you on.
Oh yeah. She knew. She knew I needed help.
Okay. So what the heck happened then? Debt collection attorneys who you had your first exposure with, like, did you want to come out of school and work with him? Like how'd you end up in personal injury law?
I didn't want to do debt collection. It's a tough industry, especially with the type of debt collection that it was. That's not what I want to do. I more wanted to go into like business, maybe go in-house somewhere.
Okay.
So maybe similar to what the guy that I was working for, because he did more than just, the debt collection. He was general counsel for the whole company.
Yeah.
So I thought I wanted to do something like that. So got through first year of law school, and have a buddy who's actually a year younger than me, but a year ahead of me in law school, who's from Hurricane.
Okay.
He had a contact, Robert Windsor, down here, got me in contact with him. and Robert offered me like a summer clerkship job.
Okay.
And then while all that was happening, I needed a job for my second year. We had an 8-month-old when we went out to Oregon.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, we had a little baby. So my wife was at home and we're just trying to do whatever we can to make ends meet. So I needed a job for my second year.
Yeah.
And I just randomly applied for this personal injury position that popped up in the middle of the summer when everyone's, at their clerkships doing whatever.
Yeah.
Pops up as soon as we get back to Eugene. I think within a day or so, I went and interviewed at this firm, it was Schlesinger and de Villeneuve.
Okay.
And yeah, I ended up getting the job.
Sweet.
So
what? Like, what were you doing there?
So I was research assistant, / paralegal, type person, I guess.
Okay.
Any research questions they had, they'd kick it over to me. I'd summarize medical records. I remember my first day, my boss, Itzik, was working on a pretty big case, and there were 7 or 8 binders of medical records.
Gotcha.
And first day I walk in, he says, "Hey, I need you to summarize these." So first exposure to personal injury, I just dive straight into a world that is completely unknown to me.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Yeah, so I end up, really liking it, the firm, really good people to work with. And I guess one of the big reasons, so that same case, that very first case I worked on, ended up going to mediation. And I asked my boss if I could go with him. He was super cool with it. I kind of just sat in the back and watched. And this, I think it ended up settling for like $1.9 million.
Yeah.
So, a big case. But it wasn't that, the dollar amount that impacted me. It was the reaction of the clients. They gave my boss the biggest hug and they said, "Thank you so much for the work that you've done."
Yeah.
It changed their lives.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, oh man, you can actually help people that are in terrible situations.
Yeah.
And then I also fell in love with insurance law. I took a class as an elective class, with, he was actually the chief judge in Eugene at the time. But he was a ex-personal injury attorney before he became a judge. And he taught insurance law. So the same friend that introduced me to Robert Windsor to get the job after my first year of law school, said, "Hey, you need to take this class." So we're all kind of at that same time. It was, working at the personal injury firm and then taking insurance law. And I know it sounds weird, but I fell in love with insurance law.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So you have this experience that affects you, where you see, the type of impact that a good attorney can have for people if when they've gone through a tough time. And so now you're really interested in personal injury law. You're coming out of school. You've built this relationship with Robert Windsor. How does that work out to then, what do you want to be back in St. George, it sounds like. So, but Robert Windsor, is he practicing personal injury? Like, how does that go down? Yeah.
So we wanted to be back in Utah, really wherever in Utah. Nothing was really coming up in northern Utah. That's really where my wife wanted to be initially. But I had this contact with Robert. So I reached out to him. "Hey, I'm graduating. Do you know of anything that I want to do personal injury?" So he said, "Well, let's start our own thing. Come and work for me in my family law practice, and then we'll partner in a personal injury firm."
Yeah.
So we took the bar, after third year of law school, I think 2019, and halfway through studying for the bar, moved back to St. George, and as 2 days after I took the bar, I started working for Robert.
Okay.
Doing family law, divorces, custody cases, some juvenile criminal law as well. He had a contract with the state, so they would just, feed him cases, juvenile court cases. And I took, I guess the Wednesday court days. I'd be in court all day Wednesday running through these juvenile.
Did you enjoy your work in family law?
man, it was emotionally taxing. I learned a lot. I didn't enjoy the work.
Okay.
I got really good exposure to the judges here, really good court experience right out of law school. I mean, the day I had my bar number, I was appearing in court representing people. So as far as like real attorney experience, I really just dove right into it.
Okay.
As far as like doing family law and juvenile criminal law, I didn't love. But I thought, if I can do this for a couple of years and slowly transition into personal injury, that's what, essentially that's what I wanted to do.
So I asked because I've never done anything else. I don't know how to do anything else even at all other than personal injury. But you've been at McMullin Injury Law for what, 3.5 years?
Yeah.
So
4 in February.
4 years. So how does that happen?
So you reached out to me. I think you guys were looking for another attorney.
And you're like, who's this guy calling me?
Yeah. So I think it was it McCrae and Trent, Luke?
Yeah, I think you're right.
You were
some mutual friends. Yeah.
And they happened to give you my number. I think I had run into McCrae, right after we moved back, had lunch with him and kind of just catching up. I've known McCrae forever.
Yeah.
And then Trent was actually my insurance agent.
Okay.
And I think that's how you got my name. So you reached out to me, and you didn't mention that you guys had an opening. You said, "Hey, let's go to lunch. I'm getting to know the other personal injury attorneys here in town." Yeah. So you and I sat down and had lunch.
So I lied.
At the end, so it's funny. At the end of lunch, you're like, "Hey, just so you know, like we're hiring. Do you want to come check out our office?" Yeah. So I was like, "Oh shoot!" Like, yeah, let's go check this office out. Okay.
You're like, this guy introduces himself to me and then tells me, "Hey, we're hiring. You want to come check out our office?"
Yeah. So you introduced me to everyone. I remember meeting, Keegan and Nate and Anthony. Yeah. And then some of the paralegals that had been there for a while. And yeah, you told, "Hey, Jordan's interested in coming over here." And then, I went home, I told my wife, she was like, "No, you're not leaving Robert."
No. She was against me from the start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now you should probably know kind of how my wife is. Very, very strong-willed, but definitely keeps me on the straight and narrow. Yeah. So she was like, "No, I don't think you should. You're starting your own thing with Robert. Like, let's see how this plays out." Yeah. I wasn't being paid very well. So making ends meet, you come out of law school, you got student loans, trying to get my life started, but barely being able to make ends meet. Like when we moved back to St. George, we moved in with my parents, and at that time we had 2 kids, a small baby. So just really still trying to figure things out. Yeah. But we couldn't afford anything. So I remember I talked to you guys and then I went and talked to Robert, I think a day or so after. Okay. And I was like, "Hey, there's some interest at another firm. I don't think I want to leave. What can you do?" So he bumped me up a little bit in pay. Sweet. Still wasn't a whole lot of money. It definitely helped. So I remember I think I called you or texted you and said, "Hey, I think I'm good. I think I'm going to stay where I'm at."
Yeah. Shot me down.
And then that whole week, so it was another situation when I broke up with my wife, it was the same feeling, right? Like, oh crap. Like I really screwed up. So, a few days go by, I can't sleep.
No way. Okay.
And I think it was 2 or 3 days after I said no, you reached back out. Like, "Let's go to lunch again." Yeah. So we went to lunch and I remember you just saying, "Look, just come apply. Like apply, come do the interview, and then we'll see where it goes. Like no pressure."
Sounds like me getting a soft close.
Yeah. Give me the old Spain Howard charm. Okay. So, and this whole time I'd been talking to my wife, like, oh man, I think I missed out on an opportunity.
Yeah.
So went interviewed with you and Anthony. And I went home to my wife. I was like, yeah, like if they offer me the job, I'm taking it.
Sweet.
No questions asked. That's where I want to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, Anthony called me a couple days later or after the interview. And I think, what was it? Maybe a month after that. I was first day at the firm.
Crazy. So we're a few months shy of 4 years at the firm. So I remember that process. And I remember just thinking, we just, wanted to have people in the office that I felt like we could get along with, and that kind of had the same type of intentions or goals about the importance of personal injury law long-term. And that we're wanted to be long-term parts of like the St. George community. So I remember for me, you just checked a lot of boxes. And so, that's why I wasn't really leaving you alone. I was just like, man, I if I can get Jordan to maybe kind of see this the way that I'm looking at, but, it's been 4 years now. You've handled hundreds of personal injury cases.
Yeah.
Tell me about like what the day-to-day is like today as far as being a personal injury attorney running a huge caseload, managing 3 paralegals. Like what's that like?
Yeah. So luckily I have, a really, really good support team. Paralegals that care about what we do, truly care about our clients. So a lot of it is managing, helping manage them, helping make decisions on cases as far as, where do we send these people to get the proper treatment? Managing things, that way, getting demand letters out to insurance companies to try and settle cases. I do mostly, as you know, I do majority of what I do is pre-litigation. So before it ever gets to a court case, it's, how people here in St. George are.
Yeah.
They, if they can settle, they will. So yeah, that's the, I guess, day to day, what I do.
So tell me about like is an example of it. What about is there a recent case that's like a bigger settlement or one that just stands out in your mind that you can give us an example of like what a personal injury case is like?
Yeah. So, I guess I settled my biggest case, 4 months ago? I think 4 months ago.
Okay. So pretty recently. So yeah, tell us about that.
Pretty recent. So it was a UTV rollover, licensed to be on the road. The guy who owned it, it was his nephew that was driving.
Okay.
And then it was the guy's vehicle. His daughter was in the back.
Okay.
They're driving home from, I don't know what it was, driving home. Nephew ends up rolling the UTV. And it's young girl. I think she's 14 or 15 at the time.
What happened to her?
She hit her head. No other, no visible injuries, but she has this terrible headache. She's throwing up. She can't keep any food down. They take her to the ER and, run some scans, and she had a brain bleed. So pretty scary, for the family. They actually life flighted her to Vegas. And the doctor there was like, man, if you got here even a few minutes later, she probably wouldn't be here.
Oh, you're kidding. Did they do like the surgery, like the pick to relieve the pressure from the brain bleed or?
Yep. So they took her right back. Like when they called, the hospital in Vegas, said, hey, we're on our way. You need to have a team ready.
Oh my gosh.
We got to go now. Get her in, get the surgery done, and, saved her life, really.
How's she doing today? I mean, I imagine this happened initially, a couple of years ago? Or?
Yeah. So she's good now. She still has headaches, every once in a while, but for the most part, she's going to live a normal life.
That's amazing.
I guess the big reason that, this is one of my biggest wins as an attorney, not only the settlement number, but when it was about a year after the accident happened that the parents reached out to us.
Oh, wow.
So it was a good buddy of mine that referred the case over, said, hey, just go talk to these guys. Cause the parents were having issues with their health insurance. Okay. Health insurance wasn't paying what they were supposed to. And they, at the time they thought this liability adjuster was helping them. She said, hey, I'm going to give you my, $100,000 policy limit. We're going to get you taken care of. Like, don't worry about it.
Okay. So they trust this adjuster and they think everything's going fine. They don't want to call an attorney.
Right. They're having issues with their health insurance. And they're having to pay a bunch of money out of pocket to keep bills out of collections. And, so they get over to us, and reviewing the case, I thought there was an additional layer of insurance, that would cover, the driver.
Okay.
So I said, hey, let me do a little bit of work on this. I think there's more coverage. So the first time I talked to the liability adjuster, she was super rude and was like, why do they even have an attorney? I'm paying the policy limit.
Yeah.
And I remember that first conversation with her. I was like, look, have you done your due diligence on finding other insurance coverages? She's like, well, there is nothing. There's nothing. Come to find out there's this additional insurance, with State Farm. But they initially said that they weren't going to cover the crash as well. They were like, it's a UTV. It was actually an Oregon policy.
Okay.
And they were like, no, we're not going to cover the crash. So I was like, okay, well, we're going to have to file on it. Like, the policy limit was a minimum policy limit of 25,000. So I thought, if we filed on it, they're just going to tender the 25.
Yeah.
As soon as I had that conversation with the adjuster, a couple days later, he emailed me and said, hey, here's a $2 million, umbrella policy.
No way. That applied to the driver of that vehicle.
Applied to the driver of the vehicle.
So how does that work though? So you're representing this teenage girl then suing her cousin?
Correct.
Yeah. So how does that go down? I mean, people in Southern Utah, we don't want to sue anybody.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of a weird dynamic. And that was one of the big concerns for the parents.
Yeah.
They don't want to go after this nephew who they still have a really good relationship with.
For sure. Yeah. It's just an accident,
want to go after,
right? He rolled the UTV. It happens.
Right,
I mean, he didn't mean to do it. He feels terrible, I'm sure.
They also had all these bills mounting.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't know, how to get these covered. Insurance isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing.
So in the end, then how much did you end up settling that case for that girl?
So total value, we got 1.3 million on it.
And they were going to settle it for 100,000.
Initially, they were going to settle it for 100. So I think we had the case for 8 months.
Okay.
From the day we got it till we settled 8 months later. That's
crazy.
It went from 100 to.
How much of that 1.3 million then did the nephew pay out of pocket?
Nothing. All insurance money.
So the claim is against the nephew, but nephew has not a dang thing to fear. Right. Does the family have regrets about getting an extra $1.2 million for their daughter from State Farm Insurance?
No.
I can't imagine so. Yeah, that is just crazy to me. That's such a good example of some of the crap that we deal with and why people are so hesitant. These people were hesitant to call an attorney for a year.
Yeah.
Because, why would we call an attorney? The case is against our own nephew. We love him. It was just a mistake. Accidents happen, right? But just getting somebody involved that has dealt with this 100 times before and that can find proper insurance coverage and then get the insurance company to do the right thing. And look what it did. Nephew didn't pay a dang thing. We love nephew, right? There's no additional family problems. And yet you're able to help this girl, to the tune of a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. Okay. Well, that's a good example. Yeah. Thanks for, I was not aware of all those details. That's crazy. So tell me about, who are some people, you've mentioned some people, but who has been kind of mentors for you in your life? You grew up in St. George, you've bounced around. Your wife's obviously been really influential in your life.
For sure.
Who else are people that you have gleaned from and that you feel like have kind of helped shape who you are now? Because at this point, to me, you're quite a successful attorney that does really well at what they do. So give me some insight into, I guess, people that have kind of helped shape you along that road.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So definitely my parents for sure. growing up, they always told us we could be whatever we wanted. I don't come from money. My parents didn't have a lot of money growing up. Both my parents worked, raising 7 kids. But they always just taught me, like, if you want to go do it, go get it.
Yeah.
So their influence that way, on just having the confidence in me to, really go live my dream. Aaron Bartholomew, the first attorney that I worked for, as far as like getting into the legal world, he was an amazing example to me. Just how professionally was, how we treated people.
Yeah.
We were debt collectors. But he never, treated anybody like, you see on TV or whatever when debt collectors are calling and that kind of thing. He's always so good to people and, was genuinely interested in helping people.
Yeah. That's cool to me. So like lawyers get a bad rap. Like people in Southern Utah, we're pretty adverse to lawyers generally, but like for a debt collection attorney to like treat those people with respect and dignity, like I can tell that has a big influence on you. And it's just like with this case where it's against the nephew,
right?
Like you have no problem with the nephew. We love the nephew,
right.
Like it's mistakes happen, but it's the same type of thing. Honestly, like a lot of attorneys sometimes are some of the most caring and genuine people that I get to interact with. But I feel like if I wasn't an attorney, I don't think I would think that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we tend to believe what's on TV.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you see on TV? Attorneys get in a courtroom and they're yelling at each other and they're, badgering people on the stand, that kind of thing. But in all reality, that's not how it is. We definitely want to get the best results for our clients. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way, especially, in St. George, where people don't want that, most of the time. We just know the right buttons to push to get the best results, and without having to, be that stereotypical, bulldog attorney, to get something done.
Yeah. Is there anything else like about, your work as a personal injury attorney that you feel like somebody who's on the fence, who maybe was hurt in a car accident and is hesitant and doesn't know, what to do there, or if an attorney makes sense at all, that you feel like you would want people to know about what you do?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, people don't have to pay out of their own pocket to hire us. If I think one of the things, one of your go-to things is, you don't need an attorney one day and the next day you need an attorney.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like people are planning for this crash to happen and now their back hurts or whatever it is. And they're like, oh crap, how am I going to pay for an attorney? Free consultations. And then, we take the case on a contingency fee. So we take a percentage of what we're able to get our clients, from the insurance company.
Gotcha. So what if you don't get anything?
Clients don't owe us anything.
So like what is there a way that a case could go wrong essentially to where a client would have to come out of pocket and pay you and it would essentially cost them money for hiring an attorney?
No, I haven't seen in the 4 years that I've been doing it. I've never, ever had that. We haven't gone and collected from anyone if we can't help someone.
Yeah.
We take on that risk. Obviously we hope that we get paid for what we've done. But we also aren't going to go charge $400 an hour that someone has to pay out of pocket, to help them with this thing that they didn't even want to be in.
Have you ever been hugged by a client when you hand them a settlement check, like they're like those attorneys out in Oregon when you were in law school?
Yeah. Cool experience. I think it's probably when I've been working here for just over 2 years. Had a lady who kind of had a wild crash. She was driving down a road, in Hurricane. There was a guy that was parked in the middle of the road, with another vehicle, facing the other way. And it looked like the two people were talking. Right. Okay. So she pulls up behind him and this dude actually throws it in reverse and, guns it and smashes into her.
Jeez.
Cops are called, the airbag blows up in her face, busts her eye up. She's an older Hispanic lady, super, super nice. So she, ends up hiring an attorney up north. She wanted a Spanish speaking attorney. Ends up hiring an attorney up north. Come to find out the guy that caused the crash lied to the cops, colluded with his friend. They told this story about how the crash happened, which it was all a lie.
Jeez. Okay.
So the attorney up north tells this client, "Look, there's nothing we can do. Here's what they're saying."
Yeah.
So I remember the day she came in and talked to her, and I said, "Look, I'll take it, see what I can do."
Yeah.
So we got the body cam, read the witness statements of the two guys that were talking to the guy that caused the crash, and just found so many inconsistencies with it. So this lady came to us hopeless.
Yeah.
Hey, these other attorneys said they can't do anything. It was my fault. And she's like, it wasn't my fault. He hit me. And she was so adamant about that. And not one of those people that, I want to go take him for everything. She's like, I just want my medical bills paid.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get the case, we send a demand, we point out all these inconsistencies, and we give how the actual story happened. And we said, look, we don't want to have to go to litigation, but if we're going to, we have a good chance of winning.
Yeah.
I get a call probably a month after we sent the demand letter to the insurance company and said, hey, what do we got to do to get this resolved?
Heck yeah, brother. That's awesome.
So it wasn't one of those huge cases. I think it settled, for just over 20 grand.
Yeah.
Got this lady's medical bills paid. Again, that case wasn't about the dollar amount.
Yeah. Well, from 0 to 20,000 for her, I mean, it's
right.
going to be a night and day difference.
A huge difference that way. But she was just grateful that someone believed in her.
Yeah.
And took the time to really investigate her case. So that was, at the end, she asked me, hey, can I give you a big hug? And had a little moment with her. So it was, that was probably one of my favorite cases, especially early, because that's really right after I started running my own caseload, and getting things rolling. So that was a big win and confidence booster to me. As far as, hey, I think you can do all right at this.
That's so cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man. I think that's a wrap. I appreciate you taking some time to let us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.